is gonna be an adventure on its own. All the people are gonna come, 'cause it's time for Victory Live. Mystery and
Oh, hello everybody. Welcome to Peaceful Creativity Live, or PCRE Live. We are putting on a live show for you, a live coaching show to help you, all of us, get more peace of mind and creative expression. We feel like the world needs more of that. Are you with us? I'm David, by the way. Over there, we got Arnie, and we're so excited.
Sebastian.
Yes, Sebastian. So excited to welcome our guest, Sebastian Martineau, an Aikido master and embodiment practitioner and facilitator, here today to talk to us about embodiment and Aikido applied to personal development and leadership. So we're super excited. Sebastian, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Very happy to be here and looking forward to discussing with you both.
Great.
Well, we're very happy to have you as well, Sebastian. Before we jump into the show in itself, Guy, if you're watching, this is a live show, so you can type your questions, your insight, react to what we say, ask questions to Sebastian about Aikido, about embodiment, about leadership, and we are thrilled if you communicate with us. And if you want to be sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram.
All right, great. Thanks, Arnaud. So, Sebastian, I took some Aikido, and I trained in it for just a few weeks before I got hurt. I had to stop, not from Aikido. I got hurt, and then anyway, the dojo changed, and I stopped going back, and I miss it, even though it was just a few weeks. Because there was some things in the philosophy of Aikido that I really liked, and I think it really connected with me in terms of my own personal development and also when I work with clients about their leadership. So, do you want to share a little bit about that, about Aikido, maybe the philosophy behind it, and how it helps with how it's helped you in your life? Actually, let's start with that. How has it helped you in your life?
So that's a good question. I've been practicing for about 16 years now, and it's actually, with that length of time of practice, it's kind of difficult to put a finger on something which is really continuous development. Particularly in the first few years, it was very intense. I was practicing full time, so 16 plus hours before and after work a week. And you're kind of developing and changing so quickly when you're doing that it's difficult to keep track of it. But in terms of, obviously, there's lots of physical stuff. So mobility, reaction time, these kind of things, flexibility. There's also a lot really in terms of state management. So, calmness. Being able to deal with stressful situations, confidence as well. There's a certain confidence which I've seen in most higher level martial artists. There's something about a kind of embodied knowledge that you're quite hard to harm, which makes you a bit more difficult to threaten, basically, whether that's in a physical context or in a professional context or whatever. You're kind of like, trying to scare me now? It doesn't quite work as well. So there's multiple things. And really, I mean, Aikido is an art of paradox. I think, you have to understand a little bit Eastern philosophy and non-duality and, this kind of yin-yang thing. So there's incredible softness, but potentially incredible hardness in it as well. And it's about union of opposites in a whole variety of ways. And, yin-yang is not black and white. There's the dot in each of the ones. So there's the dot of yin in yang and the dot of yang in yin. There's the black in the white. So, on one level, you can look at it as a martial art. But in that level, it's kind of strange because it's a martial art about peace. It's a martial art about not adding violence to a violent situation. It's potentially an art about negating violence, and that's quite strange and needs quite a bit of time to unpack. As a martial art, as a self-defense art, there are relatively immediate benefits, but most of the effective self-defense is relatively long-term, especially if we're talking about dealing with the attacker in a way that doesn't harm them and negates the situation. I think, Arnaud, we were discussing earlier, you're a Krav Maga practitioner. Krav Maga tends to be a lot more brutal, but you kind of reach a certain level of Aikido and you realize that actually quite often the shortest, quickest solution is brutal. But there is a kind of value. One of the values of Aikido is generosity, is that you're competent to do a lot of unpleasant, quick and brutal things, but you're also competent enough to choose not to. And to deal with the person in a way that doesn't that is powerful and effective, but that doesn't harm them. So that's the martial art thing, and there's loads of debates and things that we could go into there. But then there's the personal development path. In many ways, that's more that's quickly more obvious. You change a lot. And you can you start responding differently to people, to situations. Your patterns, your habits change. It's quite good. The practice of Aikido itself is quite good for trauma release. There's lots of stuff in terms of relationships. First one is relationship between mind and body within ourselves, and then obviously relationship with the other. We train to deal with the other in a peaceful, creative way when they're trying to hit us with something. And obviously that carries over to working relationships, romantic relationships, intimacy. I mean, there's a huge amount of things to unpack there.
Yeah.
And then there's a spiritual path, potentially. Although the founder of Aikido apparently said something quite interesting, which is that Aikido isn't a religion, but it completes them all. I think that's an interesting statement because it basically, Aikido is about how to be peaceful and not violent and loving as a default setting, but backed up with power. And we'll talk about that when we come to leadership, I think.
Seb, you already said so many interesting things that I'm going to risk interrupting an Aikido master by asking you a question.
I won't slaughter you. I'll be un-Japanese.
I don't know if I would do that if we were live, but since we are live, but through the computer, so I'm risking it.
Just going to reach across.
So I really liked what you said, that the confidence part make that you can be not fazed when someone is trying to scare you. And I especially like that you brought that to the corporate world, or to the professional world, let's say. Yeah. Could you maybe elaborate on that and give an example of a time where you use this knowledge from Aikido?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we need to step back a couple of things, and we need to talk a little bit about embodiment and state.
Okay.
So, what do I mean by state? Embodiment is basically the how of being. How am I right now? Yeah, we can do a super simple experiment. How would all of us sit? Well, first of all, notice how you're sitting. We've got a certain way at the moment that we've settled into. If I wanted to be more awake, present, perhaps interactive, how would you change how you're sitting?
We're going to stand a bit tighter.
Yeah, we might. Yeah, we might. I mean, it's difficult to do with the screen and stuff. I'm going to disappear off it for a bit, but I would maybe stand closer. I would maybe be more erect. There's a certain state that something happens. in our physiology when we do that. If we wanted to be kind of chilled out and more relaxed, again, I might kind of sit back on the chair and whenever I do that, my physiology has an immediate reaction. I yawn. If we did the whole session like that, it'd be kind of sleepy and boring for the people watching. But so our embodiment, how we're being right now, how we've shown up right now, has an impact on our state. So in one I'm more awake, active. In another I'm sleepy, and so that can be one simple way of looking at it. So in terms of like confidence and in feeling under threat, what does our physiology do? There's actually quite a lot of similarities between fear, anger. It's fight, flight, freeze. There are others, disassociate, fawn, but I'm not going to go into those. But fight, flight, freeze are the basic ones. Freeze, I stop moving. Not bad. Tigers, their eyes see movement. So if you stop moving and pretend you're a tree, you might get away with it. There's an evolutionary reason for that. But when we go blank during an exam or a presentation, that's usually freeze. Our nerves have come up and our mind has gone blank. How would we do angry in the body if we were having an argument? Now, for example, how would you?
I think the face is the first, and like the
So there'd be a coming.
The teeth are probably showing the canines and
showing the teeth, perhaps tensing the jaw. Yeah, there's some tensing here. Tensing the shoulders, coming forward. Anger is a bit forward. Fight is a bit forward. We're unbalanced in that direction. Fear, we'd be going probably the other way. So quite often there's a nice. I was doing the Embodied Facilitator course last year with Mark Walsh, who's a big person in embodiment. They're doing embodiment conference and stuff at the moment, and he's got something from his book on embodiment, which is the keep calm and carry on sign. So this one is keep calm is useless advice if you don't have a reliable state management technique and have addressed your trauma history. Now, because actually when you say to someone calm down, most of the time they'll swear at you.
Yeah.
Because
the worst thing you could say to like in a relationship argument is like, relax. Like that.
Yeah, because most of the time people don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
We don't know how we're making negative emotion in our body. So, if I said instead of calm down, relax your shoulders, open out your chest, extend a little bit the back of your neck, soften your jaw, soften your tongue. Imagine relaxing all down your center line. Take some deep breaths. This is in the moment state management. Some of these techniques, centering techniques, we call them in Aikido. Aikido has had a big impact in terms of those in embodiment, in the embodiment world, because it's got very, very clear operational techniques for accessing calm, resourceful states in the moment. And they're trained by constantly being attacked on the mat. So when you come to a situation in real life, I'm quite hard to piss off. It's quite difficult to make me, particularly in a face-to-face situation, like anyone else, I can get a bit pissed off online more easily because I'm not really in relationship. I'm not in an embodied relationship with another human being. I've got a screen and maybe some words, and I'm also being human, quite good at getting pissed off at myself. That's a different question. But in terms of stressful situations, now after a while, your training is embedded enough that that's what you go to under stress. Particularly, like, for example, for me, live blade knife training, and doing that quite dangerous thing in black belt exams, and realizing that the most stressful part of the preparation of the exam, the thing you're most worried about, is the moment where you're the calmest and everything is happening in kind of slow motion. And you're kind of going, great, under very high levels of pressure, that's the state that comes out. Now, that's high level training, but centering techniques are taught in embodiment. I use them in coaching. I use them in, when I'm doing leadership facilitation. They're very accessible. Like anything else, obviously, you have to practice them so that you can apply them under pressure. And that takes a certain amount of time, but it can be very useful. So, for example, a client comes in, they've got their coaching question and they're obviously somatically distressed on some level. Their question's not very clear. There's a lot of emotion on top of it. Get them to center, relax, return their physiology to a calm state. And usually they'll have a clearer question. And they'll perhaps have a slightly even already different perspective on the problem that they're coming with. And
yes,
in terms of,
okay. So I'm just noticing. Sorry, Seb. I'm just noticing that part of state management, part of the result of state management is that your thoughts literally change. It sounds like what you're saying. Like you're changing your body position. You're doing relaxation down your center line. By the way, I love that. I would love to pull out some really specific things people can try. They can take away from this and try them as experiments. But this relaxing down your center line sounds like a really useful one to do in any kind of difficult situation at work or life. And what you're saying is that when you adjust your state like this, you literally all of a sudden have a new perspective on the problem.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, we've lost your sound.
Oh no, I'm here.
Oh, we lost your. Yeah, okay. I mean, actually, I had an interesting conversation with a trauma therapist recently, and he says, like, usually within us there's a kind of ball, and it's a ball of bad experience and traumatic emotions, which sometimes something out there kind of connects us to that, but we're not aware of that, and we're not aware of how our body is doing that and is kind of protecting that charge or tensing around it, armoring around it. We tend maybe to be aware of the emotions, but most human beings, we're not very articulate when it comes to our own emotions. And we're not very good at exactly naming them and so on. And what we tend to be aware of is the inner dialogue that is being created by how our body is doing an emotion, and that emotion and that body is associated within us to a certain number of thought patterns. So why does this always happen to me? Oh, and blah, 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 whatever the hell it is that, we like to do. But it's kind of like the record that gets stuck on. So, and this is where a lot of people are trying to solve it. Trying to solve it in a much deeper problem that we're only aware of at the inner dialogue level with inner dialogue. It's never going to work, it's not going to work. No. But if we go to, well, how is my body making that emotion? And why don't I make a resourceful, calm state with my body? And yeah, exactly. As you said, thoughts change naturally because the thing that's making those thoughts isn't there anymore. We've got the directionality wrong in our culture. I mean, it doesn't start with language and thought. It starts far, far, far deeper.
Yeah.
So, in the context of business, I mean, obviously, it's this kind of stuff has been really helpful in sales meetings, doing presentations, or all these moments where you need some kind of calmness and confidence. But in terms of those moments where, I don't know, you're in the bar or at a festival or on the street, and someone is looking for a target. They're looking for someone who is going to respond with fear and anger, so that they can justify attacking in some way. It's verbally, it's, maybe they bump you, maybe they, or they're speaking at you aggressively and stuff like that. And usually I kind of find it amusing now, because that kind of just turns on the calm. And I'm like, are you sure? And I don't really want to play that game, and I'm not going to. Like, you're not going to make me upset. And there can also be a certain, I think you're in the wrong place. 90% of the time, people go, "Ooh, yeah, maybe I am in the wrong place. I'll go and find someone easier." Because usually it's, they're upset about something, they're looking at a target to hang it on, or they just want someone to bully because that'll make them feel better about themselves.
Did you ever hear about that study that where they had people in jail who had been convicted of crimes? They showed them videos of just random people walking down the street, and like if they, the proportion was something like if they interviewed 10 convicted criminals about who they would choose to rob, it was something like 8 out of 10 of the picked the same people walking down the street. And it wasn't like it was always old ladies or always a certain gender or a certain type of people. There was no actual demographic correlation between the victims they chose. They were noticing something about the way those victims those potential victims carried themselves. They were noticing something about the way those people walked, how they were looking around or not, and so you can imagine that, that's an extreme situation on the street, but in the corporate world, where bullies do exist, where, certain people are looking to attack and dominate, or even, in relationships, if you have, a friend or family member who is kind of can get triggered into a very dominating state, you can see how, this idea of my own centeredness, my own confidence, and my own ability to de-escalate sounds like a super useful skill in all those situations.
Absolutely, it's a useful skill in business, in personal relationships, in self-defense. It's an absolutely vital life skill on one level. And I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking of I was leaving the second module of the Embodied Facilitator course, and I got picked up by my brother, and something had happened in their household, and I was basically going back to two highly traumatized humans in a very stressful, difficult situation, where I basically had to talk them to the most reasonable outcome. I had to get them to contact the police. I had to get them to contact their landlord. And I basically spent 24 hours centering, minus the 8 hours that I was asleep. Or maybe not 8 hours, it was more like 5. But I was kind of like, I have to bring their trauma down and bring them to rationality, and the only way I can do that is to be constantly centering and embodying calm and being contagious, because again, a lot of leadership is contagion. I often, when I talk about leadership training, I say most leadership training is from the neck up, like most training and education is from the neck up. But we're well aware that most leadership capabilities are not intellectual, and they're not information based. Presence, power, connectivity,
emotional intelligence,
care, emotional intelligence, and these are the things that we've usually either learned from the accidents of our life, accidents of development, family, friends, relationships, and so on, or we're lucky that we did do some kind of embodied art, whatever that could be. It could be dance, it could be theater, it could be, and it, like, so for example, I've always been very confident speaking in front of a big audience, and I usually don't need a microphone because I did theater when I was 16, 17, 18. And I got used to speaking to an audience and to sending my voice to the back of the room. It's just a skill. But it served me for a very long time.
Sebastian, I was wondering, because you talked about the situation when there is this external trigger, whether it's someone bumping on you during a festival or in the corporate world, or maybe in the personal relationship as well. Is there one of the scenarios that you find more challenging than the other?
I think it's obviously, in a way, again, if I was to look at it purely from a martial arts perspective and go back maybe 10 years, actually, the sort of the violent threat is the more easy one. Because you're trained for it. I have a bad habit of, if I see a situation that I really don't like in the street, to be there before I've noticed that I was going there. So that could, potentially get me into trouble for sure. But, I've got a certain level of training that people don't. I wouldn't necessarily do it in every country and in every situation. There was something I quite liked about, there was a phrase, I think, from one of the Japanese Aikido teachers. If you see two men fighting in a bar, you sit back, drink your drink, and admire their technique. If one of the guys is on the floor against the wall and the other one is still kicking him, you stand up and suggest that perhaps it's over now. But it's again, if two guys are just having a fight, what business of yours is it to intervene, really? If someone is crippling someone and putting them into hospital, that's not, that's not acceptable. So that's quite, nowadays people would want maybe to rush to stop it. I quite like the Japanese perspective. It reminds me of my Polish friends. There was always a time at a Polish party where two guys would have an argument, and then they would punch each other for a while. And then, very contrast to British culture, one of them would go, right, that's it, you win. And the other one would go, great, let's have a drink. And, British people would just, they wouldn't know when to stop. So I liked it. There was a certain gentlemanly violence, which is an interesting cultural aspect. Now, obviously, again, in a corporate world, the attacks are much more subtle, usually. There's a lot of politics and positioning, but there's a useful thought, which is all attacks are trying to attack either your mobility or your stability or both. What it means, and this is a psychological attack, verbal attack, physical attack. So mobility, they're trying to stop you from moving. Yeah. So that might be someone grabbing your arm so you can't use it to hit or defend yourself. And it's more difficult for you to move. The next attack, or the other kind of attack, is the one that attacks your stability. So they've grabbed your arm, they punch you to get you on the floor.
Wait, what's like a psychological version of like attacking your mobility?
Yes, same question.
How could we imagine that in business? This would be a colleague from another department maneuvering in such a way that you can't get to the meeting, or you're not able to speak, or they've managed to put their department above yours in the funding thing. They've somehow prevented you from
moving forward,
from
like
being
progress,
from moving forward. Yeah. Attack on your stability. They might, I don't know, say something to make you upset, to make you say something stupid so you look like a fool in the meeting. You know, there's a whole number of ways we could imagine. You know, you're rarely in a corporate context going to get someone walking up to you and punching you, but you might get someone who's using their position to dominate, or who's maneuvering behind you in some way or another. And again, simply being kind of calm, unfazed, but with a kind of I know what you're doing thing. That's quite tricky. That's trickier to handle than if you get upset, afraid, angry. None of these are really that resourceful. I mean, it's very simple. You know, if you imagine a sword fight, if you freeze, you're dead. Yeah. If you're afraid and you're already pulling back, you're dead. If you're angry and lose control, attack too strongly, leave yourself open, you're dead. It's that simple. None of those states are of any use, really. You can use the emotional fuel. So one of the things that's very interesting when you become quite a high-level practitioner is that you've got this calm state, you know, and you can think Aikido is all about softness and calm, and you could think it's something where everybody's asleep. But when you look at high-level Aikido practice, it's very soft, it's very calm, but it's also very powerful, and it's also very dynamic and very balanced and mobile. And so actually you can be calm, but with an enormous wellspring of emotion. And at that point, that emotion just becomes power. It's just energy, you know, controlled by your ability to maintain, controlled and channeled by your ability to maintain your state. In terms of leadership, I think what I really like, and there's something deeply Aikido about this anyway. How Aikido, Aikido is all about leading and following effectively, in terms of how the art is done. You can actually contrast three embodied states. There's compliance. Yeah, where we kind of, okay, I'll do what you want. Where we kind of, you know, it's soft and floppy and and now in martial arts sense that has very little use. I mean, the only use of compliance is basically playing dead or saying yes, because the threat is so overwhelming that you have no other option. If by saying yes, that might be the only way you save yourself. So that's all that compliance does. The opposite of compliance is resistance. It's fight. It's going against. That's, you know, that has value and power, and usually is what fighting arts are based on, and even the Western idea of strength is all based on physical tension and muscle resistance and so on. But the interesting thing from an Aikido perspective is people always resist in a direction. So by resisting, they're always unbalanced. They might be going, no, I don't want to go that way, but they're open to going that way because they're pulling or pushing that way. So, you know, quite often some people say, well, Aikido doesn't work because you practice non-resistance, and that's the same as compliance, which is not true. And the Aikido movements don't work when someone resists. Well, yeah, of course they don't, because the movement is trying to go in one direction. If the person is kind of going, well, I am not going in that direction, you'd have to finish the movement. You'd have to force them, in which case, A, you need to be stronger than them, which is not the point of Aikido, and B, you've got to force them, which is also not the point of Aikido. But if they're doing that, if they're resisting, then you go, okay, I can't do that movement. You want to go that way? Let's go that way and do that movement.
I'm very curious about how you adapt that to leadership, because I see some idea of how it can apply what you said, that using the resistance of some people to lead them somewhere else. Yeah. But before we get into that, I just want to remind the watchers that this is a live show. So if you're interested in what Sebastian is talking about or about what we're talking about, please let us know, ask some questions. And if you want to not miss an episode, as I said at the beginning, follow us on Instagram and subscribe on this YouTube channel. And also, there is a way that you can support what we are doing here at Peaceful Creativity, and we'll tell you more about that at the end. So, Seb, can you tell us how you translate this work with resistance toward leadership?
So actually, these are the two polarities, resistance and compliance, the two polarities that are not actually very useful. The central one that's practiced in Aikido is leading and following. And in many ways, Aikido is all kata. So it's like dance. It's one attack, one movement. And you learn it, you repeat it, and you learn the whole syllabus and repeat it, because you want to create in your body a sphere of potential movement, which is not conscious. Because if you're wasting your time going, oh, he's attacking in this way, I should do movement number 20. You've been hit. It's your thoughts are too slow. So you have, in a way, to trust your body and your training to respond for you in a way that's resourceful. But as you're learning Aikido, when you're the attacker, you're learning to follow the movement to its conclusion, to the moment where you're thrown and you roll and you attack again. And to do that, you have to become very perceptive. You're following mind-body coordinated with very relaxed hands, very sensitive, and you have to be ready to move absolutely with almost over time with every thought of your partner. There's a certain almost, it's not psychic, it's not magic, it's just that you've learnt with person over person, hour after hour, that certain parallels. People think and move in the same ways, and you've learnt, your body has learnt what that means, and to move with it, because that's how you stay safe, coming out of the throw or whatever. And that actually then transposes to leadership. Because actually, when you're leading in Aikido, you're never forcing. You're always going, where does this person want to go? When I'm teaching kids class, I usually, just for fun, say there's two movements in Aikido. One is, oh, you want to go that way? I help you. And the other one is, oh, I'll just put you over here till you calm down. Throws, immobilizations. But to do that, you have to know where the person is trying to go. And you have also to be aware that if at any moment they freeze, they resist, they change direction, you're able enough to be aware of that and then lead them to, in Aikido, what is the most non-violent creative outcome. I don't do Aikido primarily because I'm worried about being attacked on the street. At my age and in the Czech Republic, that's really not that likely. I'm interested because it makes all my relationships more creative. It increases my embodied intelligence. I'm more self-aware. I self-regulate better. I'm more aware of others and their embodiment, and I'm more aware of how I can influence it through my embodiment. These are basic. Embodied intelligence is one of the core leadership capabilities. So, that embodied intelligence, leading and following, and then embodying, I think, what are the key aspects of leadership. And for me, that's power and love and care. Power and love. There's one Aikido teacher, Paul Linden, who said, power without love is brutality. and love without power is ineffective. There's a certain truth in that. So power, what do I mean by power? I mean, embodied presence, some of the side effects of someone who's done martial arts for a period of time and is very calm, is very confident, is difficult to upset, threaten, put in a box. So there's that. But what is the purpose of that? We'd think power is about, we're so put in, power is about imposing our will in our culture. But power, and this is in line with Simon Sinek's work on leadership, power is about making people feel safe around you. We follow leaders because they make us feel safe. Yeah? Or actually, ideally, because they make us safe. Now, this is the original anthropological evolutionary point of leadership, that alpha males, females make the rest of the group feel safe. They also regulate the relationships so that conflict and danger is not happening within the group, but they also keep the danger external. So, we gave them loads of good stuff. This is Simon Sinek again. We gave them loads of good stuff like good people to procreate with and lots of food and stuff, because we needed them to have kids early and we needed them to be well fed because they're the ones who went to deal with the tigers. And so actually, historically, the leader's life expectancy is not high, until we got to kings and they would lead the battle from a nearby hill.
But that's super interesting to see this parallel, because I think that's still the case in many corporations. As long as you're like a frontline employee, you do your job, it's all right. You're not in the political game. You have like some numbers to make and that's it. Yeah. But the moment where you stick your head and you become a leader, then I can say from my years in corporate that I've lost a lot of bosses like that, like they're all happy they get a promotion and then 3 months later they get their head cut, so it's it's interesting to see this parallel that you're talking about. That's okay, you're the leader, but you're dealing with some bigger danger than we are.
But a lot of leaders,
the role of...
a lot of leaders don't realize this role that Seb's talking about. They don't realize the role of the protector. I mean, so I've seen so many teams just been paralyzed because the leader is not clearing the way. The leader is not setting the stage. The leader is not having those difficult conversations with other teams. The leader is not basically, dealing with the conflict that clears the way for the team to perform.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, Simon Sinek does a great example. If you look at toxic workplace cultures, all the conflict is not the competitors and the wider world that we have to navigate in, but the other departments, the members of the team. Everyone's, in the old days, what was the leader's job? The leader's job was to make sure that everybody had enough food and that you could go to sleep safely. So no one's going to come and stab you in your sleep. The same thing. The leader should be making sure that no one is going to be stabbing you in the back, that the dangers are all outside the group. And that's, despite Simon Sinek's work, I think that's still not clear. And this actual safety thing is indissociable. Power in a way is the means. Because the other side of it, care or love, being connective or also caring about your people. And it's very interesting that in our culture, we tend to think of those as polar opposites that are not to be embodied in the same person, even though we have examples of that being the case. But we tend to think, love, the person's a bit wet and a hippie and soft and maybe, compliant and, that's all wishy-washy soft skills stuff. And it's completely the opposite of power, which is strong and determined and being able to. But actually, you can have someone who embodies both, where power is in the service of care. caring about having a great product, giving value, having a great company, having your people looked after. Some of the, and I've met many now, great leaders that I've met, consciously or not, those are the things that they embody. They embody care in a broad sense, and and you could be a bit, well, you could use the word love. I mean, it's always a difficult word to use in corporate settings. I know that 10, 15 years ago when I started my corporate training career, my colleagues would be talking about the L word.
Oh my God, no.
Because actually, 15 years ago, if you mentioned the word love, people would still start giggling because they'd think you were talking about sex. We're that element of ourselves is still so repressed in our culture, really. Even this notion of being a caring, loving person, was considered anti-business for a period of time. There's the ethics of business, and so power in the service of care, where the leader is creating, by their presence, by their embodiment, by who they are, how they show up, a powerful circle of safety within which people are, all that threat shit has gone. So people can be creative, people can be connective, people can collaborate, and so on. I've seen it happen in lots of teams and companies, but it's rare that you see a whole company with that culture. It does exist, but we're still quite far. And I think, a lot of it, I remember when I did a few years ago the Positive Leadership and Strategy MA at IE Business School. There was one guy who he was the CEO of some of the biggest supermarket chains in Dubai, and he obviously worked for the Emir. But he said, I went to business school, I went to management school, I did the management degree, and the one thing they don't teach you is how to manage people. We're not taught psychology, we're not taught embodied intelligence. We're not actually taught the core skills that we really need to be a leader. Some of us arrive to them by accident or by some more or less conscious development. But in some ways, these capacities are not really taught.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how everything in this world is related to relationships, and everything at work gets done based on relationships and the dynamics of those relationships. And we're obviously in relationships constantly in our life with friends, collaborators, our romantic partners. But there's no course ever growing up in school. There's no course called relationships. Instead, we have to learn about some archaic, we have to learn how to write cursive in third grade instead of learning about relationships. We got to learn ridiculous history facts and how to do math problems that computers can do, but we never learn about relationships. It drives me crazy.
I wish we would go back to a slightly more Greek model of education, where they included theatre, because it's amazing the amount of things you can learn from drama and the arts, music, art, and then wrestling and physical sports. I mean, really, all of those are necessary for a complete person. Specialization is for insects. It was a Robert Anton Wilson. No, Robert Heinlein quote, maybe, actually. But I saw it in a Robert Anton Wilson book. But I'm quite hopeful in a way, because I can see with, this embodiment is becoming a bigger thing. And if you look really at where it comes from, it is really psychology and personal development meeting all the old body traditions, and these body traditions speaking to each other. So whether it's martial arts, yoga, meditation, dance, all the different kinds, partner dance, improv, trauma therapy and body work, all of these, speaking to each other. And I think, there is a hope that we're going to start teaching some of this stuff in schools, in companies, in, really we've been so cognitive for so long. We're still having massive arguments about being emotionally intelligent, and most of us have no idea where our gut is, or where the rest of the body, or the connection to the floor. All the wisdom that is the neck down is far more accessible now, and through doing some of the traditions yourself. And it's something that in embodied facilitation and coaching, we often help people find which particular art and practice would help me develop in some way. So, if someone has been promoted as a leader but is not actually confident enough in projecting power, they're very connective and kind and caring and stuff, but they're not very powerful, then you might recommend that they do karate or kickboxing or tango or something a bit fiery to start building that embodied capability. Same if the person was a little bit too reactive, aggressive, a little bit too pushy, you might ask them to do something like contact improvisation or comedy improvisation or Tai Chi, Aikido, some more softer partner dance. Because if you go to partner dance, there's, like Aikido, there's immediate leadership lessons. Yeah. Am I actually leading my partner, or am I dragging them, unpleasantly around the room? Or am I just not giving them enough data for them to follow me? Am I not being clear? There's a massive leadership insight here into just in terms of, am I giving clear direction? And so on. So the amount of stuff in every embodied art that you can unpack and apply to life is really deep.
Yeah,
I like fantastic.
Go ahead,
okay,
Arno.
Go ahead, baby.
Oh, we're so generous on this show. We're so generous. I'll go. So I'll take over. But the one thing I really liked what you said is this. There's like you had made this motion when you were talking about leading and following, kind of at the center of a polarity between total compliance and total resistance. There's this like dynamic leading and following thing, and it made me think about how, So first of all, what you're talking about is leading people by figuring out where they want to go, which is has such obvious, immediate, and interesting motivational impact in the business world. Yeah. But also, then there's the other side of it, which is following. And we've talked in a very few leadership scenarios or leadership courses has this concept really come up. But it's the idea of leading by following. So sometimes there's an ability to lead by not interjecting. There's an ability to lead by allowing something to happen. There's an ability to lead by being being at the back kind of thing. And if that's done with this powerful care that you talk about, because in the situation you're allowing someone else to flower or whatever, then that is, that it just, I saw when you're doing this motion, I just saw how skillful, how useful it would be to develop that skill of, okay, you want to go this way, I'm going to take you this way. Oh, but now I'm going to let go and come behind you, and I'm going to let you lead the motion for a little bit. Oh, now I'm going to swing back around, and you want to go this way, I'm going to direct you a little bit, so this, it is like a dance almost, most leaders do not at all think of their roles in those terms.
No, I think that's true. And a simple example I remember reading in a book from another Aikido practitioner when he was applying this to public speaking. so he would be giving lectures or something, and he'd get kind of hecklers, or people who were asking an aggressive question or saying, yeah, but that's wrong because blah 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 blah, and he said in the past he would have a somatic reaction, so it would put him in either fight or flight to an extent, and he'd often be like, he'd quite enjoy. He said earlier, he'd quite enjoy destroying them, or shutting them down, or something like that. But after doing quite a lot of Aikido, what he said he'd quite often end up doing was he'd be going, sorry, I'm not quite sure I understood that. Can you repeat the question, right? Okay, and so wait a minute, what does that mean? So okay, and you think that that's the case because this, right? Okay, and so basically he'd kind of go, explain your point of view to me, because you can't lead someone if you don't know where they're trying to go. It's fundamental, and you don't know that unless you know your partner's mind. So that's another fundamental principle of Aikido. So he was he tries to find out the person's mind, and then at some point he goes, right, okay, so what you're saying is that you think this because this and this, right, is that right? And the person usually goes, yeah, thanks, you've heard. And he goes, right, okay, but have you considered this? And at that point, the person is more likely to go, no, wait a minute, I hadn't thought of that.
Yes.
How does that change? And then you've got the person in a creative dynamic where actually you're co-creating together, because you've gone from having a win-lose thing to something where you're collectively trying to identify truth or something, or a way to go.
So that's an amazing way to conclude this episode. I mean, there would be so much things we could talk about, but we want to be respectful of your time, Sébastien. Thank you so much for making.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
So, where can people find more about you and your work? And
okay, so if you're interested in Aikido, we do in Prague. We have live sessions, and I'm also putting some online, either classes or one-to-one. There are some limitations to what you can do online, but there are a lot of things that we can do. That would be, have a look on Facebook. It's One Earth Dojo Praha. One Earth Dojo Prague. That's a Facebook page. If you're interested in coaching, either online or in person in Prague, it's, again, on Facebook, Positive Psychology and Embodied Coaching. Positive Psychology and Embodied Coaching, bit of a mouthful. And then for the corporate training business, website is being reconstructed, but it is live at the moment. And that's www.positiveleadership.biz.
Yeah, this one is displayed on the screen right now, and the other one we will put under the videos and in the various places where this video will be posted. So, thank you so much, and
thank you guys. Pleasure.
Yeah,
and,
thank you so much, Seb. It's sorry, you're going to say something?
No.
Oh, well, I just really love how so much of the show was about disarming your own kind of attack or defensive reflexes, disarming the opponent's attacks. And I think if we really took the time to learn those skills, so many conflicts would be avoided in personal life, corporate life, relationship life, even out there on the street. So thanks so much for sharing these ideas about, centering. And I'm sure they can find out more when they contact you. I'm sure you put out some more stuff about how to center yourself, but practice these skills, people. These are using your body to access this peaceful creativity that we're looking for. So thanks so much, Sébastien, for being on the show. It really was awesome.
I'll just share one little more anecdote that I quite like from, it was a Japanese teacher, Koritoshi Maruyama sensei. He was coming to England for a few years before he got too old to fly in his 80s at the time. And he had a really nice phrase at one point during one seminar when he said, "The feeling of Aikido is like your favorite uncle is too drunk at a wedding and you must take him back to his hotel room." And that is the kind of embodied feeling that you would take towards an opponent. It's someone that you care about who's for some reason in a fun, and you have to take them to safety somehow. And I think that's very applicable in our relationships, professional, personal, and in a self-defense sense as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Arnie, as well. And until next time, everybody. See you later. Oh, I'm going to play the outro time.